Hi, welcome back to Live and Question Period with yours truly, David Crayden. Thanks for joining me. Tell your family and friends, like this broadcast. Now we're down to about 3, 4 days now before Question Period ceases for the summer. Everybody goes home on June 21st, which is my birthday, and that's how I remember that every year. And this is the last week of Question Period until September, probably the third week of September. So let's make the most of it. I'm going to be doing something during the summer, not necessarily every day on the hour of two, but I will, of course, continue to broadcast. But I'd like to do some live events as well on a regular basis. Let me know in the comment section what you'd like to do. I know all you folks like to get together on this broadcast to communicate not only with me but with each other, and I think that's wonderful. So and please, let's continue to do that. I'm just checking your comments now to make sure everything is kosher here. We've been having a few technical difficulties lately. I think we've got everything under control now. So, honk honk to everybody. So, please let me know what you would like to do during the next 3 months in terms of following politics in a live way. I'm about the only person who does this live every day, and I'm going to have to assess that over the summer to see if we can want to do that in the fall instead of just coming back with the best of Question Period. Say at 5 o'clock. I don't know. There's so many people out there just doing the least and getting the most back from it, and it's frustrating at times to be putting as much work as I do into this and getting not as much back as you anticipate. But I hope I'm doing a good service to all of you. And before we go to Question Period, I want to share a video with me that we discovered this morning. And it's quite interesting because the G7 summit, of course, it gets more and more bizarre as the years go out. And there's so many of them now. The G7, G10, G20, where everybody's there. The G7, of course, is the closely knit club it's essentially the original members of NATO. And this was a particularly bizarre G7 because it was a competition between our own Justin Trudeau and the U.S. President Joe Biden in terms of who could act the strangest and who could act in the most bizarre fashion. And it looks like Trudeau actually succeeded in upstaging Joe Biden, who looked confused, perplexed, hapless most of the time, lost all of the time. Justin Trudeau, of course, was always trying to be the center of attention as a true narcissistic individual and unalloyed narcissistic individual is. And that's what he tried to do, yelling out things when they're having a photo. Really, didn't that remind you of the kid in elementary school who decided to make a funny face during the class photo? That's exactly what Justin Trudeau is doing here. He's calling out glory to Ukraine. Everybody's looking over at him quizzically, like, who is this guy anyway? Oh, it's Justin. And it just strikes you as typical of Justin Trudeau. Before we run out of time, I want to show you this clip from Larry Fink, aptly named individual. Let me just move my screen up over here. Aptly named individual who is the CEO of BlackRock, one of the most odious enterprises on earth. It just sucks up money, resources, people, everything in its wake. It's like an army, an industrial economic army. And of course, it thinks it's going to take over every last vestige of Ukraine when the war is over. Sorry, folks, you're not going to be allowed in because Putin's going to win the war. Ukraine is not going to exist as the current state it is. And BlackRock's going to be sent packing. But that's not what Larry Fink wants to hear. In fact, he wants to tell the G7 who's really in control. Who's boss? Well, guess what? We are.
The IMF and the World Bank were created 80 years ago when banks, not markets, financed most things. Today, the financial world is flipped. The capital markets are the biggest source of private sector financing, and unlocking that money requires a different approach than the bank balance sheet model of yesterday. There's still a lot of work to be done, but reform over the past 8 months have resulted in billions of new dollars for the developing countries' infrastructure. That's what you saw last week with the announcement of the Investor Coalition. BlackRock, GIP, KKR, and other major firms will deploy $25 billion in Asia's emerging economies. In a way, it's an Indo-Pacific counterpoint to Italy's Mattei plan, which is helping African economies grow, and that's important. Every country in the world needs a growth strategy. But if I could convey one more important message today, it would be the countries that need growth most right now are not just emerging economies. Great economic powers, including the G-7, are in fact on the list and need growth going forward. All of us are staring down a growth dilemma. Whether we solve it or not, it's a significant economic fork in the road for our countries. Today, the G7 average debt to GDP is 129%. No matter how much we tax, how much we cut or reduce that debt, it will not.
Okay, did you all catch that? That's the famous Justin Trudeau smirk. It's hard to know what he's thinking, where his mind is at, if he has a mind left. This is Justin what? Making light of it all? Approving of it? Denying it? I don't know. You tell me.
Not be enough. The only way we can achieve this future of growth is by truly growing out of it. But just growth is becoming more important because we need to be focusing on our fiscal health. It is also becoming much more difficult to achieve. Within 25 years, most of the G7 countries will be on demographic downslope. Working age population will decline. The ceiling on growth will get lower and lower. This is why building new infrastructure is critical, especially through public-private partnerships. Infrastructure investments is a counterforce to the high-debt, low-growth economies.
Yeah, that's all there is. He goes on for quite a bit longer in a longer version of that. But this is the guy who really thinks he should rule the world. Along, of course, with the WEF. But you can see what's happening. You've got the WEF globalists working hand in hand with globalist industrial organizations like BlackRock. And nobody is keeping these people accountable. And of course, it's corporate cronyism, if you want, corporate capitalism, capitalist welfare. These people are not getting ahead on their own initiative. They are part of government. They want to be a layer of government, but yet suck up the profits for their own use. And they're not sharing these profits with anybody. And here we go to questions Orel here.
Radical liberal environment minister is threatening to impose an order in council which would put at risk thousands of jobs in the Quebec forestry sector. I would undo that radical order in council in order to protect those jobs. But until I can do so, there will be an increase in the cost of lumber and wood for home building. We will also see job losses. How many Quebecers will lose their jobs because of this radical liberal order in council?
Gilbo is mad. He is an insane person.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for decades now, the federal government has had a responsibility to protect species at risk throughout the country. We need to protect species at risk. In this situation, the woodland caribou is impacted. When we protect species, we work with the provinces and territories and various orders of government. We're going to work with our partners to ensure that we protect both jobs and species at risk. I look forward to continuing to work with the Government of Quebec to protect both the environment and jobs. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Yes, but Quebecers can protect both of those because this matter falls under provincial jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker. The Bloc has maintained this radical liberal government in power. They've kept them in power, and that's how the Prime Minister is able today to impose this order in council, which will kill a bunch of jobs. And the minister said that the Bloc, and in fact, it's been reported that the government might in fact get involved and interfere with this file. Why is the Prime Minister and his minister deciding to get involved and interfere with Quebec's jurisdiction to kill jobs in the forestry sector? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, another day, more evidence that the Conservative Party simply does not understand that to build a strong future is to protect both the environment and the economy. We cannot build a strong economy without protecting the environment, and that is exactly what we are doing. On the other side of the House, though, they don't have the ability or the desire or a plan to protect the environment, to protect species at risk, or to protect the future of Canadian children. Mr. Speaker, we need a plan to protect the environment. That's what we're delivering on.
See, the little twerp Yolbo is sitting there, not taking any
common
questions.
sense conservatives who are saying that the Prime Minister's latest tax hike on small businesses, farmers, home builders, and healthcare is not worth the cost. Now, former Liberal Treasury Board President Scott Bryson says the Prime Minister's support for the tax hike is a combination of moral sanctimony and economic complacency from ministers who simply do what PMO tells them. He calls it socialist bafflegab. Why is the Prime Minister going ahead with killing jobs and raising costs with what his own Liberals call socialist bafflegab?
Oh, by the way, we're still in the midst of the heat wave here.
Despite the Conservative leaders,
it's called summer.
Attacks, the raise on capital gains inclusion rates is very simple. If Canadians make more than $250,000 in profit from selling investments in a given year, we're asking them to share a little more of those profits with Canadians who need those
2/3 of their
whether
profits.
It's by investing in housing, whether it's standing up for school food programs, whether it's delivering dental care to seniors. These are investments we're making to support Canadians by asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's not partisanship for me. It's his own former Liberal Treasury Board president who calls it socialist bafflegab. In fact, the tax begins applying on the very first dollar that a small business earns. And, you know, he's been promising that raising taxes would make life fair. We find out today from the Food Banks Association of Canada that now a record-smashing 25% of Canadians live in poverty after 9 years of his taxes, his deficits, and his doubling housing costs. Why is he going ahead with the same wackonomics that caused the poverty in order to solve it?
Now that's quite a figure.
The Right Honourable
25% poverty.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition talks about affordability, but he's standing against raising taxes on the wealthiest so we can give more supports to those who actually need it. He's standing against our school food program, which is going to help 400,000 kids across the country have fuller bellies as they study, and take the pressure off about $800 a year for families who are pressed with the cost of groceries. We're continuing to deliver dental care supports to seniors, and as of next week, to young people and Canadians with disabilities. We're there for Canadians. He's voting against it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It has been 9 years of this Prime Minister promising a trickle-down economics, that if he just takes money away from small businesses and workers, it will go from one level of government to another level of government to another level of government. It will trickle down. And now 25% of Canadians are living in poverty, something he tried to cover up, just like he covered up his own data showing $25 billion of extra costs with the carbon tax, nearly $2,000 in carbon tax cover-up for every single family. How can we trust anything he says about taxes, poverty, or money?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition hid for 8 weeks while he was trying to come up with an answer to us, asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share so we could invest in fairness for every generation. I think he needs to go back to the drawing board because his answer is completely illogical and unfounded. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to delivering for Canadians struggling with food prices, we've got a national school food program that's going to help 400,000 kids that party is voting against, Mr. Speaker. They talk about affordability, but they're actually only interested in themselves and their political advantage.
He really thinks a free lunch program is the answer to anything? This man is nuts.
L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. The Premier of British Columbia,
No,
David
the
Eby,
blockheads
wrote to
are
the
up.
Prime Minister
You believe
to
that
ask him to
exchange?
share more information and share
Trudeau
information
keeps
better
repeating
about
a
foreign
dental
interference
plan
with his
that
province.
doesn't
Now,
work
we know that
for
with foreign
older
interference, the
people.
Prime Minister isn't
It's not
very
even applicable
proactive.
to
He
older
prefers
people.
to just close his eyes
one
and wait
free
for
lunch a
things
day
to
for the
calm
kids
down. What we've
is
seen
the answer
is
to
that
all the other
federal
economic
foreign
woes in this
interference
country.
is not limited to the federal
The
government.
government can
It can
steal
impact many orders of government. So why does the Prime
of
Minister
your capital
refuse to
gains
share critical
that
information
you've
about foreign
invested your
interference
life
with
into.
premiers and
You've
provinces?
invested all of your
The Right Honourable
savings
Prime
into.
Minister.
The government can steal 2/3 of that,
On the
and that's
contrary,
fair
Mr. Speaker, we are working
because that's
with
the wealthiest.
intelligence
It's actually
services
the
and with
the
CSIS
goof that's
to be
standing up
able
right
to
now,
share
lecturing people in
classified
the House of
secret
Commons.
information
He's
with
one of the
provincial premiers
wealthiest Canadians,
so that we
and
can
he's
better
got all
work
of his
together on
money in
this very
tax
real
shelters,
matter.
so it
This
doesn't have to be
the
taxed.
problem of foreign interference.
And
We've
he
also
has
created many
capital gains. You
mechanisms
can
and
bet he's not paying a
institutions
cent
to
in
counter
income
foreign
tax
interference
on it.
more than any
But
government before
everybody
us, and we
else
will
in this
continue
country
to be
who's not
transparent
part of the
and
special elite
thorough
that
in
Justin
countering
Trudeau is part
foreign
of, they'll
interference.
be paying
I thank the
two-thirds
Bloc Québécois leader for
of their investment
proceeding
to this
to
government.
get
That
security
is
clearance, and we hope the
obscene,
Conservative leader will
and
do the
this
same.
fat
The Honourable
cat Prime
Member for
Minister
Saint-Jean.
knows it's obscene, and
Well,
all he can do
the
is
Prime
talk about a
Minister's
free lunch
dilly-dallying
for
has
the
had
kids as
consequences.
a
He
solution,
refused to give
and that's
information
somehow
about the
going to
Winnipeg National Laboratory
ameliorate the
until ordered to
problem.
do so.
He doesn't even know
Also,
what that word
there
means.
were
He doesn't understand the first
problems
thing
with
about
lack of
economics. He got here
collaboration with
because he's a drama
provinces
teacher and
when
he
it
thinks
comes
this
to
is a
information
role he's
sharing.
playing. And
The
believe
Prime
me,
Minister is
that's
as much
all
part
it
of the problem
is.
as he is part of the solution. He needs to step up. What is he waiting for to give Quebec and the provinces the information that he has? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker. Bill
Yes,
C-70
Tammy, I did a report on that
we
actually in the
just passed through the
Post-Millennial.
House with the support
That
of the
he,
Bloc Québécois.
this guy is
that
so
has
desperate for
been sent to
attention.
the Senate
He
for
is
further
so
study.
desperate to be the one
Well,
everybody
Bill
looks at.
C-70
Like, who is this guy
seeks
anyway?
to
He
enhance
yells out
information
glory to
sharing
Ukraine during a
with
group photo.
provincial and
As I said
territorial
at the beginning of
premiers.
the broadcast, doesn't he
Information
remind you
sharing
of the kid in
when it
elementary
comes to
school
foreign
who makes the funny
interference or
face during the
any
school
national
photograph?
security threats.
This guy is an
Through the
idiot.
bill, we would share information
He's just
more
never
often
grown
and
up.
more consistently. We are
And
working
unfortunately,
respectfully
every time he
and
leaves the
in
country,
cooperation
he acts
in
worse
order
than
to
he
protect
does
our
inside
democracy
the
together
country.
as a team.
For 3 months, this Prime Minister has known about serious allegations that parliamentarians are knowingly working with foreign governments to undermine
Well, he's
our
Jughead brought it
country.
up.
Yet we don't know if he's had a single conversation with any member of his caucus. And the Conservative Party leader doesn't even want to know about serious allegations of foreign interference that directly impact their party. Why do both of these leaders put the interests of their party in front of our country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, as all parliamentarians know,
You're a joke.
The honourable member from
You're a
Battle
walking,
of
talking
Crowfoot
joke.
knows indeed that he should not be speaking at the time. So I'm going to ask the honourable member, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, to start from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, all parliamentarians in this House know how important it is to protect our democracy from foreign interference. That is why we've been working together, whether it's on a National Security Committee of parliamentarians that we created over the objections of the Conservative Party, whether it's through strengthened mechanisms within our national security universe, but also through election interference monitoring by top public servants. We have taken more actions on preventing foreign interference than any other government, and we've continued to work
There he goes,
with
stuttering and
independent commissions
stammering
like the
again.
Public Inquiry.
He's
to
done
get to the bottom
nothing.
of it.
He created a great smoke screen is all you've done. He's
The
created a
Honourable Member for
cloud
Rugby South.
of
And
distraction.
not taking action. Depuis 3 mois.
For 3 months now, the Prime Minister has had information about allegations of parliamentarians knowingly helping India and China. The Prime Minister thinks he knows better than everyone, but he has failed to act. He's done nothing. And meanwhile, the Conservative leader is hiding because he does not want to know the truth. Why will neither of these leaders put Canada's best interests before their own best interests?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, last week, both the NDP leader and the Green Party leader obtained security clearance such that they were able to read the full, unredacted, classified NSICOP report. Then they were able to share their point of view. They had two different points of view, but they were able to read it and share that. But the Conservative leader has chosen to remain ignorant, in the dark. He does not want to obtain security clearance to read the classified information because he prefers to simply engage in partisan attacks.
Answer the
Honourable Leader of
question.
the Opposition.
Prime Minister divides to distract. He turns groups against each other. He fans the flames. He gave funds to an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier. And so even before October 7th, hate crimes were up 162%. And since, we've seen the rise of Hamas-inspired hate camps at university campuses that intimidate Jewish students and promote genocide. Will the Prime Minister finally summon the courage to join with me and call for these hate camps to be shut down and closed up so that students can safely go back to school?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I welcome the Leader of the Opposition recognizing the divisive rhetoric and the division that is occurring in Canadian society right now. We have a problem with hatred. We've got to address that problem with hatred. We know that the statistics show that hate crimes are on the rise 130% in the last 5 years. That's why I was proud to stand with CEJA when we tabled Bill C-63, the online
I knew that was coming.
that would improve penalties for hate crimes, that would provide a definition of hatred, that would ensure that we are keeping Canadian communities safe. The Special Envoy in Anti-Semitism supports
Polyev
the bill.
asked for
CEJA
that.
supports the bill. I'm just wondering why the Leader of the Opposition does not.
Yeah. We got a lecture on the Online Harms Act.
Member from Thornhill.
About those hate camps, all while he allows 700 agents of the Iranian regime to openly operate in Canada 4 years after they killed 55 Canadians, 30 permanent residents, and funded the brutal massacres of October 7th. 6 years of excuses and they did nothing. But with a by-election on Monday and the Prime Minister desperately needing to pad his margins, it turns out that there might be enough pressure for them to finally ban the IRGC terrorists that they should have banned years ago before they set up shop here to terrorize our communities. Why does the Prime Minister always put himself ahead of the safety of Canadians?
I wonder if Trudeau's fled.
The Honourable Minister of Public Security.
Mr. Speaker, our government has
think
taken
Trudeau's
a
left the
series
House.
of measures to hold the murderous Iranian regime
Just
to account.
too much pressure.
We have
Just
consistently
couldn't
said
handle it,
and
man.
taken measures, whether it's under immigration legislation. We've listed the Revolutionary Guard Quds Force in terms of being a terrorist entity. Mr. Speaker, we take advice
Oh,
from
Polyev
national
walked
security
into that one,
agencies
asking
in terms
about
of listings,
go
and we think
more hate
that
crimes,
honourable
more hate
members
crimes.
should
You're going to
allow
get
that
Varane
process
up
to
saying,
take
"Oh,
place.
we've got hate
When we have
crimes
some
for you.
news, we'll be
We've got a
making an
great hate
announcement
crimes bill
appropriately."
coming your way."
L'honorable député de Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, there is a reason why people are saying that the Environment Minister should resign. Once again, he is going after forestry workers. Thousands of jobs are at stake in the Saguenay region. And yet, Quebec has the
I wonder
largest
if
network of
Disco
protected areas for woodland
Steve
caribou.
Ubo
But the Environment Minister
will
still
ever
wants
stand
to
up
impose
today.
his order in council without considering the socioeconomic consequences. This minister, who lives in Montreal, never
The heat's
understands our
just too
regional
much for
issues.
Steve. You know, he's in this heat wave
When will
in
the
Ottawa.
Environment Minister
It's called
stop
summer.
punishing forestry workers who are just trying to do their job and earn a living?
Yeah, it's a couple of days early, but it's called summer.
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Environment and Climate Change Minister. Well, I would like to remind my colleague that I was born and grew up in the beautiful town of La Tuque in my colleague's riding, the Minister of Industry's riding. Now, my second point is that Quebec has committed since 2016 to publishing a caribou recovery plan. And there was a letter from the provincial and federal government in 2022. And in 2022, once again, Quebec promised to implement a caribou protection strategy and to protect 65% of that species habitat. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le Fjord. Mr. Speaker, how many times has the Environment Minister been to the Saguenay region to meet with representatives of the forestry industry? Once? Twice? No, 0 times. No times, because he doesn't seem to be able to travel outside of Quebec. The forestry industry is crucial in Quebec, but he doesn't even seem to understand that. He needs to stop going after the industry. He needs to decide not to impose his order in council. Thousands of jobs are at stake, and that means thousands of families are at stake too. Conservatives will always protect forestry workers' paychecks. Will the minister respect Quebec's jurisdiction once and for all, and will he leave forestry workers alone?
Leave the country alone. Leave me alone. Leave us all alone. That should be the rallying cry of Conservatives.
The Honourable Innovation Minister.
Oh, yeah.
Mr.
So this jackass
Speaker,
stands up.
A little guy from Shawinigan or Latuque will not be taking lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to protecting our regions, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we know how to protect both the economy and our environment. We've always invested in the forestry sector. We will always continue to invest in the forestry sector and industry. And for workers in that industry, watching, tuning in from home,
lobbying lately, Randy boy?
House, we will do everything we can to defend them,
calling
to make
those
Canada
trans
stronger
kids all
and
night
better,
long.
and to guarantee a great future for future generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lille, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, 9 years of this Liberal government means 9 years of encroachment on Quebec's areas of jurisdiction. The Environment Minister wants to impose an emergency order in Council to restrict the work of forestry workers, and which would imperil thousands of jobs in this sector in Quebec. Only a Conservative government would protect forestry workers' jobs. With the help of the member for Avignon, La Métis, Matane, Matapédia, will the Environment Minister stop infringing on Quebec's jurisdictions with his radical He and the Bloc Québécois member.
All right, I have been putting your comments
this.
up, folks. I'll start doing that.
The Honourable Innovation Minister. Mr. Speaker, we understand that forestry are part of Canada's DNA, very fabric, and the workers of the forestry industry are incredibly important. We're investing in the forestry industry.
Oh, yeah, you're investing in it. Yeah,
Not only are we doing that, but we're also looking into developing new technology.
You keep saying it's burning, it's all burning down with climate change forest fires.
In the 20th and the 21st century, and then beyond that, we are working with all sorts of partners, and those who are tuning in today can rest assured that we always protect the forestry industry and its workers.
I think Trudeau has left. But he spent all of 5 minutes here today.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years in power, this Liberal government still hasn't figured out its place. It persists in imposing its incompetence on the provinces. It wants to pass an emergency order in Council to protect the woodland caribou and completely encroach on the jurisdiction of the Quebec government, which is seeking to protect jobs, nature, and the economy. And just imagine, the Bloc helps them every time. Can the radical Minister of the Environment put his radical ideas aside, mind his own business, and let Quebec handle its affairs? The Honourable Innovation Minister. Yes, we have been in power for 9 years. And after 9 years, finally today, the Conservatives are waking up. It's Groundhog Day. Well, the beginning isn't today. We've been here. We'll continue to be there. We've been there for the forestry industry. We'll be there for them tomorrow. We are protecting the jobs of today and the jobs of the future. On this side of the House, we will continue to work hard, and we'll let the Conservatives chat and not do much, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Shefford. The program Aging Well at Home is a perfect example of the federal government's lack of compassion. Since 2022, the Quebec government has been asking for the money to be transferred to Quebec because this falls under Quebec's area of jurisdiction. Meanwhile, Ottawa has been trying to impose its conditions. Today, the federal government prefers to cut seniors' checks rather than reach an agreement with Quebec. The government's priority is clearly not helping people. This government's priority is to make all the decisions and then look good while being the ones to hand out checks with maple leaves on them. What is this government waiting for to transfer the money instead of just failing seniors? The Honourable Tourism Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague. The program Aging Well at Home is a federal national program to help seniors age safely and with dignity. Mr. Speaker, our government invested $90 million in this program so that community organizations can put forward projects. Mr. Speaker, Quebec organizations and groups put forward projects through this program, and this funding will continue to work very hard with them to ensure that they receive funding. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Well, there's clearly a problem, though. This government has already created 2 classes of seniors. For 65 to 74-year-olds, the government will not enhance old age security. For those aged 75 and up, they're entitled to an increase of OAS. The Aging Well at Home program once again creates 2 classes of seniors, Quebec seniors and Canadian seniors. Seniors in Quebec will not receive any assistance from Ottawa under this program, which helps people age well at home and supports community organizations. Seniors in Canada, though, will receive assistance from Ottawa. What's the government waiting for to transfer the money? Why is it holding Quebec seniors hostage? The Honourable Tourism and Economic Development Minister. Mr. Speaker, community organizations have worked very hard to present projects through this national federal program. Seniors need these projects. Sometimes it's meal delivery, sometimes it's help with transportation and getting around. We are in solution mode. We're working with Quebec. We'll continue to work with them because we want to ensure that community organizations will receive the funding they need so that they can help seniors. There are no 2 categories of seniors. There's 1 category of seniors. There are just seniors, and this government is here for them. The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Well, one of the best ways, Mr. Speaker, to address labor shortages is training. Training is the key to ensuring that we have a skilled workforce in all sectors of the economy. Everyone agrees about this. Workers, employers, the government, everyone's unanimous. Yet Ottawa is cutting transfers, leading to a windfall of $145 million. We know that the government is tired, but the government needs to wake up. Will the government reconsider its decision to cut transfers for labor force training? The Honourable Minister.
There's the man who calls the
formed
trans
government,
kids
we
all night long.
began to invest
When he's not
significantly
lobbying
and heavily to train
his own
millions
government.
upon millions of Canadian workers from coast to coast to coast.
This guy is a bloody joke.
Now, the program in question was not
Another
renewed
crook
in Budget
occupying
2024
a
because
government
it was
job.
a temporary measure. We are here to work with provinces. We will continue to help them.
Never,
Training is
who the
very
hell
important.
ever
Training is an area
had
of
the
shared
stupid
jurisdiction.
idea
We
of
are
putting this
here for
guy in the
Canadian
cabinet?
workers, all Canadian workers.
Competent buffoon.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
This Liberal NDP Prime Minister is robbing hardworking Canadians to pay for his out-of-control spending. The level of that thievery was exposed last week when the Liberals were forced to admit that their carbon tax scam robs our economy of $30 billion a year, and it picks the pockets of every single Canadian family of $2,000 a year. This environment minister is not worth the economic vandalism he has wrought on Canadians. Will he admit that his carbon tax is a scam and just resign?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, a deception was revealed last week.
It was.
The deception was the fake pose of the Conservatives to pretend to be on the side of working people. And last week we gave them a choice.
Oh,
we said
stop
they could
this
be on the
stupid
side of a
narrative.
nurse or a welder, a Canadian who lives from paycheck to paycheck, or they could side with a multimillionaire. It did not.
They don't live
surprise
from
anyone
paycheck
on
to
this side of the
paycheck, you
House
half-witted
that the
woman.
Conservatives yet again chose
They make good
their
money
rich
and they can
lobbyist
invest that
friends.
money.
Shame on them, Mr. Speaker.
Maybe you live from paycheck to paycheck because you spend all your money, but welders and electricians don't.
Carbon tax scam was exposed last week. Yeah. And it confirms what every hardworking Canadian already knows. Yeah. It makes life unaffordable. Right. The Liberals' own data, which they desperately tried to hide, shows the Liberal carbon tax scam robs Canadian families of $2,000 a year. This is money that they would put on dance fees, hockey registration, a summer vacation, or just to put food on the table. Right. The truth is, hardworking Canadians can't afford this environment minister's carbon tax scam. Will he admit it's a failure and just resign?
The whole thing is a scam. The whole climate change agenda is a scam.
Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Oh,
Speaker,
it's such a
there
burden.
really has been a scam that has been revealed. For weeks, for months, the Conservatives have been trying to distract and deceive. They have been trying to bamboozle Canadians. They have posed as being on the side of working people, on the side of people who live from paycheck to paycheck. But Mr. Speaker, last week they showed their true colors,
Look at
and
the
they
gut
showed
on that one.
they
Look
voted
at her
against
just.
the
Look at
plumber
this
and the nurse.
embarrassment.
Now Canadians know whose side they're really on.
Yeah, we're seeing right through your shabby veneer, woman.
Swan River, Nipawa.
That's the best you can do.
Minister has been caught covering up a damning secret from Canadians. After years of telling Canadians they'd be better off from the carbon tax, his own government's data has proved him wrong. The carbon tax will cost the Canadian economy $30 billion every year. That's nearly $2,000 per Canadian family. Now that we know the Environment Minister chose to vandalize the Canadian economy with his carbon tax, will he do the right thing and resign?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that climate change is already costing Canadians $25 billion in the last 10 years alone. Not 5 years from now, not
Where'd
10
they
years
grab
from
that
now.
number from?
It's already happening.
Gilbo's
And if we
small
don't do anything,
imagination?
It's going to be an extra $35 billion to Canadian taxpayers. What we're doing on this side of the House is we're helping Canadians fight climate change, and we're helping Canadians with affordability, which is why 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back from carbon pricing than what they pay, Mr. Speaker.
Now you keep clapping for the moron, even though he's lying. Creepy Steve. Creepy Steve. Creepy Steve. Creepy
Mr.
Steve.
Speaker, this NDP Liberal Costly Coalition can no longer dispute the Parliamentary Budget Officer's finding that carbon tax will cost most Canadians more than they pay in. Their own report, which Conservatives forced them to release, shows that carbon tax will cost every single family in Canada $2,000 per year. Wow. And it'll cost the Canadian economy $30 billion per year. This
And you
is
get your
nothing short
$100 rebate
of
check,
economic
anybody?
vandalism. So after 9 years, will this Prime Minister finally do the right thing and fire his Environment Minister, or will he once again
These people are
prove that
just
he's not worth the
not
cost?
just moronic, not just incompetent, but evil.
The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Let's go through the numbers yet again, Mr. Speaker. For a family,
Go through your script again, yeah.
For Manitoba, it's $1,200. For Ontario, it's $1,120. In Saskatchewan, it's $1,504. In New Brunswick, it is $760. In Nova Scotia, $824. In PEI, $880. In Newfoundland and Labrador, $1,192 a year. To most people, that's a lot of money. To these guys, it's phony. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, just phony as you are. Time to take another trip.
From Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
People are increasingly turning to food banks in Halifax because of sky-high grocery prices, with food bank visits having risen by 21% since last year. Instead of tackling the corporate greed gouging these families, the Liberals gutted the NDP's bill to address price fixing and harmful mergers that are increasing prices for Canadians. Just like the Conservatives, they'd rather protect CEO profits over lowering prices for Canadians. Why did the Liberals choose corporate power and profits over the people of Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. We did not even only choose the people of Nova Scotia. We chose all Canadian, Mr. Speaker, when we call all the CEOs of the grocery chain to come to explain themselves in this town in Ottawa, to answer to this government, to answer to Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we have introduced one of the most comprehensive reform on competition because we want more choice, less consolidation, and more competition. But if the NDP and Conservative want to do something, Mr. Speaker, they should call Walmart and Costco like I'm doing to ask them to sign the Grocery Code of Conduct so we bring fairness in this country for all grocers across the nation.
The Honourable Member from Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
Air Canada made $2 billion in profits last year, but apparently that's not enough because now Canadians are facing steep summer price hikes at a time when they can least afford it. WestJet is even charging people $25 just to book a ticket by phone, and these costs affect northern communities super hard because their flying is often the only option. The government's response has been crickets, whether it's grocery chains, oil and gas companies, or airlines. The Liberals seem perfectly fine with corporations gouging Canadians. Why is that?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues know, WestJet make their own business decision, but charging extras for customers who book flights over the phone makes absolutely no sense. On this side of the aisle, we're working with the Canadian Transportation Agency to increase transparency of fees to make life more affordable. And what are they doing, Mr. Speaker? They're voting against all of that.
The Honourable Member from Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, June is National Indigenous History Month. It is time
We're
to
back.
reflect on the legacy and impacts of colonialism and work together towards a better future. This is a top of mind for the 12,000 First Nations and non-Indigenous residents who live in the Winnebago region in Northern Ontario. Can the Minister of Indigenous Services tell us what the government is doing to ensure everyone has a fair access to quality healthcare?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member from Brampton South for her advocacy. She's right. For too long, Indigenous people have been facing discrimination as they access health care, but everyone in this country has
How are
the
they
right
facing
to quality
discrimination?
health care. In 2018, our government contributed $158 million to plan the replacement of the Winnebago Hospital in Northern Ontario. And just like I said in this House last month, we are going to get that health center built. The federal government's contributing $1.2 billion, Mr. Speaker, so that all members in the Winnebago area region have equal access to health care.
Useful Patty. Yes, he is a complete piece of baggage.
From Calgary, Forest Lawn.
The $30 billion carbon tax cover-up has been exposed. This costly cover-up coalition hid a secret government report proving the carbon tax scam commits $30 billion of economic vandalism. The culprit of this cover-up is the Environment Minister, who has a profound love of orange jumpsuits and handcuffs. He did it to protect the leader of the NDP's pension. These champagne socialists are not worth the cover-up or costs. Why hasn't this Environment Minister been fired for misleading Canadians?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the average income in Calgary Forest Lawn is $35,000 a year. The
I don't believe
average
that.
person in Calgary Forest Lawn can only dream of having an income of more than $250,000 a year.
That's not what that's about. It's not having an income of more than $250,000. It's having an investment. Does the finance minister understand finance? No.
Multi-millionaire making a profit of more than $250,000 a year. That is shameful, Mr. Speaker.
You are a disgusting woman. You're a disgusting example of why the Trudeau government is a failure.
The House is sitting, but I'm going to ask all members on all sides, please, to not take not use your voices unless you're recognized by the Speaker to ask a question or to answer.
See, Freeland doesn't understand the basics of economics. The capital gains tax is not an income tax. It's a tax on investment.
PhD in whack-onomics. Facts are like common sense in this government and not so common. This proud socialist environment minister's woke, radical, extreme agenda sent 2 million Canadians into a food bank and 1 in 4 into poverty. His government hid a secret report that proves the carbon tax scam cost Canadians an extra $30 billion. If anyone in the private sector covered up a $30 billion loss from shareholders, they'd be fired. So how the hell does this guy still have a job?
Because it's a cabinet of incompetence. He's perfectly suited for it.
The honourable member has to be very, and all. This is a message for all honourable members. you have to be very careful about the language that you use.
No, we don't
in
have
the
to be very
House.
careful because this guy says so.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and
You have no credibility. You have no legitimacy.
Mr. Speaker, let me share some economic analysis, and I quote, "Here we have a monstrous policy of transferring wealth from wage earners to asset holders, from the working class to the wealthy. Here we have a policy that is specifically designed to transfer wealth from those who earn wages to those who earn capital gains through their assets." Who said that? The current Conservative leader.
Are you going to read?
He
She
was
read that last
railing
week.
against the holders of assets and claiming to support working people. But we learned last week that is fake populism.
The Honourable Member from Caribou, Prince George.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canada's on track for the worst living standards in 40 years. Now the Prime Minister's radical finance minister are hiking taxes on farmers to pay for their inflationary spending, all during a food crisis. A new report indicates that the Liberals' job-killing tax hike will cost average farmers 30% more in taxes. Canadians know that when you tax the farmer who grows the food, tax the trucker who ships the food, it's all Canadians who pay the price. How is that fair?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as the proud daughter of a farmer, I know the huge contribution.
As the proud granddaughter of a Nazi
And
publisher.
that is why I am glad that with these tax measures, we are able to increase the lifetime capital gains exemption to $1.25 million for each farmer in Canada. I also know that farmers are hard-working people. They are on the side of the working people, not on the side of the multimillionaires. But that's not the side the Conservatives are on, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Caribou, Prince George.
More Canadians are struggling to feed their families. 25% of Canadians are living at poverty. They can spin this 100 different ways, Mr. Speaker.
And they'll
but
keep
Canadians
trying.
know the truth. First, this government punished Canadians with the carbon tax. Now they're imposing a job-killing tax hike on the people who produce and provide the services we need to survive. Farmers, welders, plumbers, home builders, doctors, and small business owners will all be decimated by this hike. Will the minister commit to exempting any Canadian earning less than $120K a year from this job-killing tax hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes, her grandfather would be very proud of her.
showing that not
She's a
only
true
are they
National
fake
Socialist.
Populists, they're populists who can't do math. We have been really clear that the new level of capital gains inclusion kicks in only after each individual has made $250,000 in capital gains. And you can
Which
do
is
that
peanuts
every
today.
single
Have you checked the real estate market lately? No.
And the Conservatives are ashamed of themselves.
These hypocrites and their gilded pensions. They know they never have to save a dime for the future. They live off the public. They in the public trough their whole lives, and they'll die with their noses in the public trough. Hopefully sooner rather than later. That's all I can
The
say.
Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Yet another federal failure with the French language.
Oh,
Canada Post
get off! I
hired
don't really give a damn
unilingual
about your
English-speaking letter
your
carriers
federal
in Belleuil
failures
and
with French
Saint-Denis.
language.
They claim it's not necessary to speak French to deliver mail. Let's remind them that in Quebec, French is a language of work. We won't accept Canada Post anglicizing the workplaces of all its Quebec employees. Further proof that the
These
charter
people
of the
are
French
so
language
bizarre.
should prevail. Knowledge of French in Quebec is essential. Will the minister immediately bring Canada Post back in line? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for giving me the opportunity to remind this House that all federal institutions, including Crown corporations, including Canada Post, must follow the Official Languages Act of the Government of Canada. And the good news is that this Act was strengthened in recent years. For the first time in the country's history, it recognizes, and the Government of Canada recognizes, that we must defend French all over Canada, but in particular in Quebec. That is the responsibility of all, and it's the responsibility of the Government of Canada, with a plan with billions of dollars to help communities throughout the country. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-l'Île. By hiring unilingual Anglophones, Canada Post is calling into question the right to work in French for all its Quebec employees. It's a test for the reform of the Official Languages Act. Remember, the Liberals and Quebec reached a compromise that doesn't require federal corporations to comply with the Charter of the French language. Canada Post is using this compromise to anglicize its workplaces.
Like the world is
Does the
collapsing
minister
around them,
realize
and these
that this
blockheads
proves that
want to
once
talk
again,
about
despite the
letter
reform, the Official
carriers
Languages
talking
Act
French.
continues to foster the
This
anglicization of
country
Quebec.
is so insane.
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
I can't wait to
On
see
the
the block
contrary, Mr.
totally
Speaker,
eradicated
the new Official
from the
Languages
House of
Act,
Commons. Maybe
for the
at the
first
best
time in the
down to
country's
1 or 2
history,
members, so
recognizes
nobody
that
has to
French
listen to them
is
ever
in
again.
peril in Quebec, that it must be defended throughout the country, but in particular
They're such
in
a bunch of
Quebec.
treasonous
I've already
swine.
answered this
Why
question
they're
by
there in the
clearly
first place,
indicating
it's a
that
mystery to
all
me.
Crown corporations are subject to the same
Do you remember
treatment.
when they were the
Since I have a
official
few seconds left,
opposition?
thank you on behalf of all
Before the
members
Reform Party became
to the
the
most
official
recent
opposition?
cohort
What a
of
joke
pages
that
who will
was.
soon be leaving us for the extraordinary service they provided over the past year.
The Honourable Member from Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Larry the plumber from Winnipeg told the Finance Committee this morning the Liberal change to the capital gains tax is not fair to his generation. He's not wealthy. He doesn't have a gold-plated public sector pension or a trust fund to fall back on like the Prime Minister.
No, but Freeland thinks that plumbers and welders and electricians are so poor they can't save any money in the bank or make any investment, because that's the Canada she wants, where there's a permanent subclass of poor people relying on the government for every program.
Colleagues, I'm having difficulty hearing the Honourable Member's question. I'm going to ask him to start from the top.
So the
Member.
nanny state can give you everything, just enough to keep you alive, mind you, just enough to keep your teeth in your mouth.
Told the Finance Committee this morning the Liberal
But
change
no
to
more.
the capital gains taxes not fair to his generation. He's not wealthy. He doesn't have a gold-plated public sector pension or a trust fund to fall back on like the Prime Minister. He worked hard to build a small plumbing company, to save for retirement for his family. And now the Prime Minister is pulling the rug out from his retirement plan, penalizing his hard work. Will the Prime Minister exempt plumbers like Larry from the capital gains increase, yes or no?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, these deflecting and deceiving Conservatives should be a little bit careful when it comes to talking about gold-plated public pensions.
Well, frozen Canadian, you're supposed to be so poor you can't even put the money in the bank. You live from paycheck to paycheck. That's what Freeland tells us.
He currently lives in government accommodation.
Hey, thanks, Jay.
Colleagues, like I was having
Thank you so
difficulty
much for your
hearing the member
support.
From
I feel like I'm on a
Charleswood,
roll
St.
today.
James,
You've
Assiniboia,
encouraged me.
Headingley,
Thank
having
you.
difficulty hearing the Deputy Prime Minister. I'm going to ask the Deputy Prime Minister to please respond again from the top, and I'm asking all members
Sometimes
please
you
to
just
allow the
want
Speaker to be able to hear.
Give up in frustration, but these people leave the door wide open. They're so weak in their arguments.
Speaker, these deflecting and deceiving Conservatives should be a little bit careful when it comes to talking about gold-plated public pensions. After all,
What, like yours?
they are led by someone who has worked his entire life for the government, someone who currently lives in government luxurious housing and has a government chef.
Huh.
Now, when it comes to working people,
It's
Mr.
luxurious,
Speaker,
isn't it?
we are on their side.
I've been to
They've
his
just
house.
shown they're not.
It's not that luxurious.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. The Minister of the Environment, with the support of the Bloc, is poised to impose more radical policies on Quebec by imposing an order that will destroy the forestry industry in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. TVA Gaspésie reports that, according to the Bloc environment critic on the issue of caribou, Ottawa could get involved. Only the Conservative Party defends forest industry workers in Quebec. Can the Minister of the Environment let Quebec manage its land as it sees fit? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. I thank my colleague for his question. He knows well that we've always been there for the forestry industry. We will always be there for the forestry industry, Mr. Speaker. Forestry industry workers know that we have to protect the environment and the economy, and they also want to ensure they have jobs now and for generations to come. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to invest in innovation. We will continue to support the industry, and we will always be on the side of forestry workers in Quebec and throughout the country, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Finance, who never thinks about or consults farmers. With the help of the Bloc Québécois, she has found a new way to harm our agricultural sector.
Never consults anybody but
this
her
new
own.
capital gains tax increase will
Inner
jeopardize the
circle.
retirements and succession plans of our farm families.
I hope you're right.
UBA
Shroom
President
Creek.
Martin Caron
NATO
wrote a
should
letter
be
to
on the
her on
way
June
out
6th,
because
a
it's
heartfelt
walking
plea
us
to denounce the
towards a
situation.
third world
Will
war.
she make a commitment today
Continues
that
to do
no
that.
farmer will lose his or her retirement because of this tax hike? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, as the proud daughter of a farmer,
As the proud granddaughter of a
want to
Nazi,
assure my honourable colleague
he would be
that
very
I
proud of
often
me
speak
today.
to farmers, and
because
I
I'm raping the
respect their work
country
so
just like he
much.
raped Poland.
That is why I am proud to be able to share the news that on June 25th, we are increasing the lifetime exemption for $2.5 million. This is a big
What a
deal
pathetic
for
failure.
farmers in Quebec and Canada.
As a cabinet minister, as an MP, as a person.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, thousands of seniors, including those in my riding of Saint-Léonard Saint-Michel, have
They're all
already
rejoicing
visited
over
their
dental
dentist
care.
for treatment, demonstrating the importance of the Canadian Dental Care Program.
Yeah, I told you that was coming.
Unfortunately, the opposition persists in opposing this
Unfortunately,
program
yes.
day after day. Can the Minister of Public Services and Procurement give us an update on the success of this program for seniors
All
of
these
Saint-Léonard
happy
Saint-Michel?
seniors who won't be able to use the dental care
The
plan.
Honourable Minister of Public
But
Services and Procurement.
it's the answer to all of our
Thank you, Mr.
problems.
Speaker.
That and the free lunch for the
The
kids.
leader of the Conservative Party is against the Canadian Dental Care Program, and he is fooling the seniors of the Quebec City area by
They
saying
just
on the
throw
radio
you a few
that the
pieces
program
of
didn't
meat.
exist. So don't sign up.
You know,
Mr. Speaker, this is
that
disdain
is what
for the
this
seniors of
government
Quebec.
does.
The good news is it's
Robs
not
you
working. Out of the
blind
2 million Canadians
and
who've
throws
signed
you
up,
back a
over
little
a
bit
third are in Quebec.
of compensation
And the good news is
for
that
your trouble.
next week, all children from 0 to 18 and those with
Well, they
disabilities will be able
live
to
like
sign
kings.
up for the new Canadian Dental Care Program.
I would like to see them all. I'd like to see this house
Fraser
swept
Canyon.
clean.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker. For all the wrong reasons, Canada is now a world leader in high taxes. Ranked only behind Chile and Denmark, we now have the highest capital gains tax rate in the world. In the midst of a productivity crisis, how can the Minister of Small Business support a tax hike that will kill jobs and decimate our entrepreneurs?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, yet again, the Conservatives need to work just a little harder, not only on being less hypocritical about support for working Canadians, but just on getting their facts straight. After this move, the capital gains rate in Canada will be lower than the tax paid in California or in New York City. Furthermore, the meter, Canada's marginal effective tax rate, is the lowest in the G7, and anyone who read the budget would have seen that.
The Honourable Member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
After 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Sean, a 20-year
That's for
veteran
damn sure.
planning to retire next year, is gutted that he will have to put that off, given this government's punitive policy on capital gains. It wasn't enough for this Prime Minister to leave veterans high and dry because they were asking for more than he could give. Now, despite Sean's decades of service and prudent planning for his retirement, The Prime Minister wants to take more. So my question is this: how is that fair?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we have already established that the Conservatives are not on the side of working Canadians. They are not on the side of the nurse or the plumber or the soldier who is living from paycheck to paycheck.
There she goes again, paycheck to paycheck.
Multi-millionaire who has already made
And if they were living from
$250,000
paycheck to paycheck, that
capital
would be
gains
your
profit
fault,
in a given
wouldn't it?
year. But in opposing this measure, they're also opposing dental care that will help 9 million Canadians, school food, 400,000 children, and our plan to build 4 million homes in Canada. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from St. Margaret's, South Shore, St. Margaret's rather.
The Environment Minister is already under fire for his $30 billion carbon tax cover-up. He was a lobbyist for Cycle Capital. Cycle Capital companies got more than $200 million from the Liberal Green Slush Fund. Now we learn he is still a big shareholder in Cycle Capital. And since becoming Environment Minister, Cycle Capital companies have gotten another $17 million from the Green Slush Fund. Liberal insiders getting rich on taxpayer money, a carbon tax cover-up, the Environment Minister profiting from the Green Slush Fund sleaze. When will Liberal corruption end?
Never, never. The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
For the question, you know what's profiting for all the work of this government and all the members in this house is record investment in green technologies in this country, Mr. Speaker. We rank #1 ahead of China for the battery ecosystem, Mr. Speaker, in this country, and have more.
Oh, they can all keep living in their delusion. Quite pathetic.
Colleagues. We're almost there. We're almost there. A couple of more sleeps. The Honourable Minister of Innovation for his talk, please.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I have more to say for these sleepy Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we know what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We have seen, thanks to the work of this government, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Environment, all this bench, the Prime Minister, we have seen record investment in this country, Mr. Speaker.
Record spending, not investment. Record debt in this country. Record idiots running this country.
Mr. Speaker, Kingston, Canadians are winning. Canada's winning, and we'll fight for Canada every step of the way.
You're finished. Wake up and smell the coffee, Philippe Francois, or Francois Philippe, whatever the hell your name is. You are over. You're finished.
If I could ask all members, ministers, members, please. I am thinking about 3 more sleeps. The Honourable Member from Newmarket, Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, last month, eligible Canadians were able to begin receiving care under the Canadian Dental Care Plan.
Oh, there they go, pushing this one again.
In my community of Newmarket, Aurora, and across Canada,
Look at these-
many
look at
seniors
those
who haven't been able to
guys
afford
up there
a dentist
asking a
were now
useless
able to visit
softball question.
participating dental providers. Can the Minister of Health update this House on how many Canadians have already received care under the plan, and what the newest cohort about the newest cohort that can begin applying for the Canadian
The newest
dental
cohort?
plan?
What the hell does that mean? Did you even read it first, buddy?
The
No.
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member for Newmarket Aurora for his incredible advocacy.
Advocacy
Along with
for what?
Parliamentarians in this House who are standing with vulnerable Canadians who need dental care. In just 6 weeks, Mr. Speaker, more than 2 100,000 seniors from coast to coast to coast were able to receive dental care. And to put that in practical terms, the call center got a call yesterday
Well,
from
that's
an
the answer to
87-year-old
everybody's
woman
problem, isn't it?
in tears
That and
because
the
for
free
the
lunch
first
for
time
kids.
since she was 11 years old, somebody allowed her to get her mouth taken care of. We're going to make sure all 9 million Canadians everywhere in this country get the care they need, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, the euthanasias are.
London Fanshawe.
The Canadian Armed Forces have been saying for years that their grievance system is broken. Today's Ombudsman report confirmed this. On average, Canadian Armed Forces have to wait 1,000 days to get compensated when there's a mistake with their pay. People are frustrated, they're tired, and they're angry. Our men and women who bravely serve our country and keep Canadians safe deserve better. This government keeps failing our armed forces. Will the minister tell us the steps he will take to implement the Ombudsman's recommendations?
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And, from COVID-19 to natural disasters for their excellent work in Europe, our brave men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces have always been there for Canadians. It's our job to make sure
Well,
that our forces
COVID-19
and
have
their
to do with the
families
armed
are well
forces.
supported. And that is why, Mr. Speaker,
Dithering
I
old
accepted
fool.
all of the Ombudsman's recommendations to transform and modernize our military grievance system. And as well, Mr. Speaker, we're making significant new investments to support those members. $100 million for childcare, nearly $300 million for a housing strategy, and nearly $500 million to digitize
God,
the
this
healthcare
guy
records.
can
Mr.
barely
Speaker,
put a sentence
we
together,
and
even
our
though he's got it
government will
written in
always
front
be
of him.
there for the members of the Canadian Armed Forces.
What a pathetic old man. Bill Blair, the open borders minister and the failed top cop in Toronto.
Between 2010 and 2020, 191 Canadian military personnel died by suicide. And instead of addressing mental health challenges, Liberal and Conservative governments have cut funding, putting veterans at risk.
Oh,
the Burns Way is
the
ready
Liberals
to
have
provide
signed them up to
more
MAID.
trained peer-to-peer support to our brave veterans, particularly for Indigenous and 2S LGBTQIA+ veterans. They deserve nothing less. So will the minister commit today to funding the Burns Way? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister for Veterans Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to take a moment to thank the members of the Veterans Affairs Committee for their important study that they presented last week on women's veterans. We certainly recognize that a lot of work needs to be done, and I want to commend all the members who worked on this report. On the issue of mental health services as well, Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the Department of Veterans Affairs Canada ensured that when members of the Canadian Armed Forces or veterans are applying for mental health services, they can have access to those services immediately without any assessments. We want to make sure when veterans are applying for services that they will have the care that they need when they need it the most.
Bravo.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Bravo.
Speaker.
Excellent.
Colleagues, following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, assassinated in Surrey, British Columbia, 1 year ago today. I now invite...
No, I really don't want to get into this. Thank you very much. Anyway, that was Tuesday, June 18th. We've got 3 more days of question period. I will be with you for those days. So thanks for watching today. It's really quite something to see how weak the Liberal Foundation is. So despite the fact that 1 in 4 Canadians are living in poverty, we're the lowest in the so-called G-7. We have food banks, soup kitchens proliferating across the country. We have a housing crisis. We have a euthanasia czar. We have a government more concerned about putting up pride flags than it is about putting up real houses. We're allowing people to have the incentive to build houses. We have a government that just wants to tax people to death and pretend that it's saving their lives by giving back, as somebody said in the comment section, crumbs. Yes, crumbs, not meat, in terms of a phony dental plan and a ridiculous free lunch program for kids that's going to make everything better. These people are a gang of thieves, a bunch of incompetents, a gaggle of crooks. And really, it's time to clean the house. But I'll be back again tomorrow with more. Thanks for watching today. Please like this station. Tell your friends about it. And I said we will be doing something throughout the summer months to replace live question period. I'm just not sure what exactly it's going to be. I will continue to do broadcasts, of course. Thanks so much, folks. God bless you all. And we'll see you tomorrow.